Not many people manage to escape from North Korea. Our guest on this episode of the InnerView did it twice. Timothy Cho is a North Korean escapee and human rights activist who lives now in the UK. He has an extraordinary story, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. Timothy, thank you very much for joining us here on the InnerView. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well, but I'm very glad that you have invited me to come to your studio this morning, particularly what's been happening last week. And I'm so looking forward to this interview to tell the world what is going on in North Korea right now.
Before we look at your personal story then, what does the world need to know about what's going on in North Korea right now?
Yeah, just last week, it was on Monday in the evening, China has repatriated 600 North Korean escapees to North Korea, and most of them were women, children, newborn babies, or some of them even were pregnant. And where they end up in imprisonment, or some of them would in detained prison camps, or even execution might be happen. And this China could not do it while world was paying all eyes going into the war situation in Israel at the moment, and China made this executional process with North Korea, which exploited the moment. We have been campaigning for many years now, ask China to deport North Korean escapees to third countries where South Korean government is ready to receive them and offer them Korean citizenship under one Korea policy. And most of them have been not able to avoid the punishment of imprisonment, torture, and even execution, which there are hundreds of thousands of these escapees and in detention or prison camps in North Korea at the moment. So I was very disturbed. I could not sleep properly the past few days. It is particularly my own experience once I was sent back to North Korea, as we will more talk about it with this interview.
Yeah, okay, tell us a bit more about that. So the first time that you managed to escape, you were in China, and the Chinese had rounded you up and had sent you back. Tell us more about that as we unpack your own personal history here.
Yeah, so it wasn't particularly, when I mentioned about distressing and stress over the past few days, which my own experience repatriated to North Korea during my first escape. When my first escape, I arrested with 17 other North Korean escapees at the Mongolian border, and we were sent back to North Korea. I remember the experience. Man died leaning against my back in my prison cell, and it was enough to experience what was happening in North Korean prison cells. And not only that part where I was detained 3 times in Chinese prisons, and 1 time was in North Korea, but my journey itself, where I experienced deported to the Philippines by Chinese authorities actually during my second escape. So this was the person who China made the wise decision to deport me to another country, spared my life and other 8 North Korean women, and who I am today talking about love, and for care for others, which could China have done far more this encouraging work to do instead of sending them back to North Korea, where they know they end up life cannot avoid punishment.
Yeah, Timothy, at a very young age, you had the label son of a betrayer. Tell us more about that.
Well, no one wants to leave your own beloved home country, but it was due to what's happening born in totalitarian North Korea. After my parents escaped, I was just about 9, and it was given son of a betrayer tag. Once you have it, you are now belong to enemy class, which North Korea operate total population of 25 million into 3 categories of classifications, and one of them is enemy class. About 30% of the total population, you get discriminated against everything. From age 10, I could not attend school, which I often cried, watching other children attending school, and survived on the street. And yet, where I had a hope and I thought normal life to come in North Korea when I tried to join the army, which is compulsory for 10 years, every single man. But even that ordinary common opportunity was denied. They did not allow me to join the army because my father betrayed, and I couldn't avoid with the enemy class tag. Even if I was born in North Korea, my children would be born with the enemy class tag. You would be discriminated and persecuted for 3 generations. And I didn't have a choice. When I made that decision and determination to escape to China, it was for my survival.
Timothy, you were 10 years old, as you said. You were 10 years old ever since, well, from that moment on, you were labeled a son of a betrayer and life became difficult for you. Is that right? Was it at 10 that your parents left, or was it a bit later?
It was young. I was 9, actually.
Oh, wow. So 9 years old. Now, on the one hand, your parents leave, and on the other hand, it's also a story of, so on the one hand, your parents escape totalitarian North Korea, and on the other hand, it's parents leaving children behind. I don't know how many siblings you have. Do you have any siblings, or was it just you?
I might have a few, but I think not go into that details.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Okay, but let me then ask you.
Yeah.
Tell me about the surprise, the shock. Tell me about dealing with the emotions of your parents leaving, and tell me if you felt it was a personal betrayal as well as a child. Your parents left you.
Well, it was upside down world, and I remember around the world right now, when I look at our children and where the war happening in Ukraine, where that war happened and that conflict and bombing happens in the Middle East. And what about all these children? And you can imagine, what do they know about this world? And they should be there, with the love of parents and learn how to love and care for others. But these children, and they learn how to bombed and destroyed, life goes upside down. And yes, my situation when I was that boy, it was not bombed. But when you imagine you come home and realize parents gone, and I can't forget it. This is one of the things. And time to time, the flashback and nightmares come, particularly when I watch children left behind, and where there are millions of children around the world, they grow without father and parents. And I have my heart, and I am willing to devote my heart for these children, even if I can, and empower and let these children understand what means of love. And there's far more hatred around, because when these children are left behind like this, and bombed, destroyed, no home, and wandering around the world, and they are the future of this society, community, and world. And I'm hoping the United Nations, not just in North Korea, but particularly upon my own experience, and the world pay attention to these children and what's happening around. It was my life, and upside down when it came, and I didn't know what to do. And I survived hard, because I had to survive, and sleeping and eating, and without parents, and miss them, whole throughout your entire life.
Yeah.
And the trauma remains until today.
Timothy, I know it's very difficult for you to talk about this. I want to ask you if you forgive your parents.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. I can share this one particular experience. About 5 years ago, when my mother rang me from a hospital in South Korea. I was on a public bus in Manchester, and she couldn't talk. The doctor explained to me, your mom is going to die in the next couple of hours. But she had one question for me was, son, could you forgive me? She did not have any other words except for that one sentence, son, could you forgive me? And it was on a public bus, my tears coming out. And I cried, and I cried and cried. And I answered to her, Mom, I have already forgiven you. And I explained to her what happened to my life since I arrived in the UK. I was able to go to schools, colleges, and 2 universities. I studied political degrees, and was expecting to work in Parliament as parliamentary assistant. She was in full of tears. And with that encouragement, inspiration, and she lived 2 more weeks. And after that, thankfully, I was able to attend her funeral. I was so peaceful. I know she's in heaven. She's a comfortable, better place now. And I will share one day. But one thing I can tell you, I miss her. And I'm always grateful that God has used my mom and to be given my life today where I am. I can take this role to speak on behalf of my millions of brothers and sisters who cannot speak for themselves.
Can you tell me what was the hardest part of adapting and adjusting to living in the UK?
Well, when you first come to another country, it is about language particularly, and I had no one. And this was a very difficult part of to learn the language first. And without learning language, of course, it's even hard to find jobs and, of course, making friends. So I have to say the community, local community of a church and council, and they were available resources where I had to go, and I spent some time with homeless people as well. One of particular the church communities in Bolton where I lived, they were looking after and offering soup and food for homeless people. Well, I worked there, and I was able to make coffee and tea, each time I offered them to homeless people, in return I asked them to give me an English word. So I actually made thousands of tea and coffees and exchanged it with English words.
That's beautiful.
And I still go and visit homeless people time to time because it feels me like I'm so comfortable talking to them. And it also realizes where I come from, that the bottom of the situation in North Korea, how I survived through. It keeps me loving and care for others, which I even volunteer at food bank in my local area.
Timothy, I want to ask you a little bit about the mindset of the people in North Korea. A few years ago, I went there. I was, I guess, lucky enough to be able to film within there. We did a bit of running a marathon and trying to tell the story as much as best we could. I was also very sensitive to the fact that the people who had allowed us to come to the country and had given us the access, they had to stay behind when we left. So I was very sensitive to the fact that we can't just go there and speak flippantly afterwards, especially in the comfort of a freer society, and talk about how we saw things. So we had to walk on eggshells a little bit, even afterwards, in terms of how we did this documentary and how we did the coverage. And one thing that I felt was that you had really great people, beautiful people, in a very impossible system, really impossible system. But there was something that I wasn't absolutely sure of. I didn't know the extent to which people really believed all the worship of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong Un, the bowing and the rituals and all of that. It's a sort of religion, a kind of juche mixed with communism, mixed with a whole bunch of other things together, right? I didn't know how much was sincerity and true belief, and I didn't know how much was, you'll get in trouble unless you do this, and we have foreigners here, so you need to play up to the cameras and you need to show them insincerely how much you love the leaders and the system and all of that. Tell me about young Timothy and what he believed, and whether it was out of fear or out of love or both maybe.
Well, firstly, thank you so much to you, Imran. And you went to North Korea, you have seen the real situation inside and a lot of restriction as you saw personally while you were there, and they will keep following you. They could not allow you anywhere you wanted to see. When I was 7, the first Kim Il-sung died. I thought my God died. I cried 3 days, did not sleep and eating well, and came to school with full of tears. And I asked my father, "Father, are we all going to die because our God died?" I thought he was real, my grandfather, God. And really, it was very shocking and heartbreaking and end of the world feeling. When I asked my father said, "Son, our leader is not died. He lives in our heart forever. And we are now following the second Kim. And so there is now third Kim." Our brainwashed education started from age 2 when we started to walk. We were told to give thanks to Kim family for food having in nursery. And we learned how to bow to Kim family picture frames in every single household from age 2. When you're outside across the country, there are over 50,000 Kim family monuments where you have to bow to statues. If you don't, you end up in prison. So when I was born, I was already born in that a large prison system of North Korea. There are complete information blocked both from outside and inside. If you watch anything from Netflix or any item smuggled into North Korea, you get executed. Only December last year, 3 teenagers were executed because they watched the Squid Game. That was a popular drama, South Korean drama on Netflix. And 2-year-old boy was sent to prison camp because his parents had the Bible. Why is it so matter religious materials, whether Bible or Muslim or any religious materials that kept and you have to go end up in prison camp, including all children? And the Kim family is God in this country. They ask you give absolute love, devotion, and loyalty to the Kim family. And if you don't, there are plenty of spy systems behind next to you and where keeps watching on you, monitoring you. And when I'm talking about freedom values, it is about basic choice. We all wear different clothes, different hairstyles, different socks, different shoes. And a woman can wear dress freely to choose. But can you do that in North Korea? No, you can't. You have to have uniform society wearing same ties, same shirts, same shoes. When I'm talking about freedom of movement, this morning, you kindly provided me with train ticket. I was able to get on train from Manchester to London. But in North Korea, within towns and cities and villages, you have to get travel documents and permission from authorities. And people do not know the concept of a passport, have ever imagined to travel foreign countries. When I was about 5, I think I asked my father, "Father, could I become a journalist?" I thought if you become a journalist, you could travel all around the world. But my father could not give me an answer. My both parents were high school teachers. I was surrounded by love of my parents. When father answered to your children, we give them encouragement and challenge, adventures. But when my father could not answer me, particularly where he was a history teacher in high school, it was probably one of the painful moments for him. And later, when he made that decision to escape to another country, it was because if we didn't, all our family could end up, when I was a little boy, end up in prison camp where you could expect to die like that. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners. And yet people are starving. Yet North Korea putting huge amount of money into weapons. What's the point? What is weapon for whom? It's now about primary responsibility to protect its own people. And if I'm a leader, and if you're a leader, would you allow your family to die while you're putting money into your buying weapons? I would not do that. It's a painful process. You do that, but North Korea does abandon its own responsibility.
And Timothy, to that point,
its own people.
To that point, you studied political science. You are involved in politics, human rights activism. There's a very tough political question with regards North Korea. It seems as if everybody wants a free North Korea, but nobody is willing to free North Korea because of the implications of it. So you have a country with nuclear weapons, the weapons that you were talking about, and other weapons. To a large extent, there is support from the Chinese government, as you saw when you were rounded up and sent back, and as those other people are seeing. The Chinese have their own reasons, pragmatic politics, they don't want refugees across their border, whatever it might be. But there's a calculus in a cold geopolitical sense, realpolitik, which means that, especially given that North Korea has nuclear weapons, other countries are afraid to do anything substantial to try and change the situation, right? And I wonder, Where do you land on this issue? In order to get a free North Korea, is it going to be ugly? Is there going to be more war?
I don't want, if you ask me personally, I don't want to see another war. Korean War in 1950-53 had experienced killing of millions of people, and was not only both Korean people side, but it's also both from NATO troops, including Turkey, your country, and Britain, US, and even China, and all who supported on the side of North Korean side, millions of them died. I am here, speaking of on people's behalf. I come from, lovely family, and I survived on the street, and I saw people dying of starvation, and I saw people dying of in prison cells, and I saw ordinary people in both China and North Korean prison cells. And while we keep talking about geopolitics and weapons, do we really think about these people, lives of people, destroy families, and killing them? Where is our humanity and love for all these millions of, look at around the world, millions of refugees, where they are fled, their home country, all these dictators, because the people don't follow and listen to you, and you kill them, imprison them, and kick them out. That's, I have seen broken pieces of my family in front of my eyes. It was the last resort. We meant to, grow up in a family, to be loved and how to love and care for others, not to hate one another. And that concept, if we even say ideology of that, hate one another, that grow up and train them, become even terrorists and killing others, the innocent lives. Before we press that bomb and buttons, we must remember that bomb and button press, it's gonna kill many innocent children, women, elderly, and people. And I don't know why our world is turning into this direction, including my home country, North Korea. Enough is enough. And I want to see the people of North Korea have the life what I have experienced since I arrived in this country. And I want them go to school. I want them finish high school. And I want them have a choice to what to do after it. A number of my friends who joined the army came home with malnutrition, and many boys died. If they had a system of in free society and freedom values, and where you could choose your own path and freedom, and that gift to contribute to the society and community and the world. And while some people who use that gift into dictating their own people and produce a mass weapon of destructions, and that kills people. I'm crying out to God, where is justice? Mm-hmm. And how many times I have cried out to God, why you are not in North Korea? But I don't ask that question anymore. But I'm asking God today, I'm ready to be used.
Timothy, the leadership, we know with Kim Jong Un and his sister, they studied in Switzerland. They have access, they've had exposure to the world. We know that there are many North Koreans who are making money in places like Macau and other places. Given their exposure to the world, given that they're probably aware of the criticism and aware of their place in the world and how different they are to the world right now, is it ever possible for this system to reform itself?
I am not sure if I give you a straight answer personally, because this country has distorted the truth from 1948. They don't have root. And even when they teach you the education about who first invaded the Korean War, they actually say South Korea and NATO invaded North Korea first. That part of history I grew up And I understood in that way. You cannot see anything and compare with outside and history. So in that perspective, and how North Korea opened the door, reform itself, and we may have to ask the regime. And because I'm in the studio, I'm asking to the whole world, could you please ask North Korean government, are you willing to reform in that way? And are you willing to provide food, feed your own its people? But what I am here to asking those remaining elites as well inside North Korea, the history will remember. But I'm encouraging those elites to choose the right path. As it has been history, they also learned those elites through the elite education. And we will have to take part of this process. But I'm really encouraging those elites in North Korea who may take bravery decision to step out. And there are people outside who are also join the campaign and change this country, because we know these people are still don't know what freedom and the basic human rights.
Timothy, I know this was not easy for you, and I'm thankful that you opened up to us. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you taking the train, as you mentioned, from Manchester to go down to London to talk to us. Thanks so much, Timothy. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.